Rachel Reeves just detonated a property tax bomb that's about to blow a massive hole in the UK's luxury housing market. While everyone was expecting the usual budget tweaks and minor adjustments, the Chancellor quietly slipped in a wealth tax that targets the exact people who've been propping up Britain's high-end property sector for decades. If you own a home worth more than £2 million, you're about to get hit with an extra £2,500 every single year starting in 2028. Got a £5 million mansion? That'll be £7,500 annually, thank you very much. This isn't just another tax grab. This is Labour sending a crystal clear message that the days of property wealth sitting untouched while working people shoulder the burden are officially over. The Chancellor stood up in Parliament talking about stability, investment and growth after 14 years of Conservative rule. But buried in the details was this seismic shift that's going to fundamentally change how wealthy property owners think about their investments. And here's the kicker. This affects less than 1% of UK homes, but the psychological impact on the entire market could be devastating. We're already seeing whispers from estate agents that luxury property viewings have dropped off a cliff since the budget leak. But before you think this is just about millionaires crying into their champagne, wait until you hear how this connects to the other changes that are going to affect every single property owner and landlord in the country. If you want to stay ahead of these massive changes hitting the UK property market, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Property Reporter to get all the latest property, economy and housing news before it impacts your investments. But the property tax is just the appetizer in this feast of financial pain for landlords and investors. Hidden deep in the budget documents is a change so significant that most property investors haven't even realised they've been hit yet. From 2029, salary sacrifice into pensions gets capped at just £2,000 per year. Now that might sound like pension jargon that doesn't affect property, but this is where it gets interesting. For years, savvy landlords and company directors have been using salary sacrifice to shelter massive amounts from the taxman. We're talking 20, 30, even £50,000 a year going straight into pensions tax-free. That money would then get borrowed against or withdrawn to fund property deposits and renovations. Think about what this actually means. A landlord earning £80,000 who was sacrificing £30,000 into their pension to avoid the 40% tax rate suddenly loses £28,000 of that benefit. That's over £11,000 in extra tax they'll be paying every year. Money that was going into property deposits is now going straight to HMRC. The property investment seminars that teach these strategies are scrambling to rewrite their playbooks because one of the fundamental pillars of tax-efficient property investment just got demolished. And it gets worse when you combine this with what's happening to investment income tax. The Chancellor didn't stop there. Every single type of investment income is getting hammered with a 2 percentage point tax increase. Property income, dividend income, savings interest, all going up by 2 points across every tax band. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer with a rental property, your tax just went from 20% to 22%. Higher rate? You're looking at 42% instead of 40%. But here's where it gets really painful. Most landlords are also getting dividend income from their property companies, and that's getting hit with the same increase. You're essentially getting double taxed on your property empire. The government's own analysis shows this will raise billions, and guess where most of that's coming from? The same landlords who are already dealing with the mortgage interest relief changes, the upcoming EPC requirements, and now this tsunami of tax increases. One major property investment firm calculated that a typical portfolio landlord with 10 properties could be looking at an extra £8,000 to £12,000 in annual tax bills. That's before we even talk about the pension changes. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom in the budget. Reeves threw in a surprise gift that's actually going to help both landlords and tenants. A £150 cut to energy bills starting April 2025. The government scrapping the ECO scheme and removing those legacy green levies that have been inflating our bills for years. For HMO landlords who include bills in the rent, this is massive. If you're running a 5-bed HMO, that's £750 straight to your bottom line. Even regular landlords benefit because lower bills mean tenants have more money for rent. But in typical government fashion, they're giving with one hand and taking with the other. Electric vehicle owners are about to get stung with a new road tax, 3 pence per mile for fully electric, 1.5 pence for plug-in hybrids. So that Tesla driving tenant who chose your property for the charging point? They're about to see their transport costs shoot up by hundreds of pounds a year. The property market near good public transport links just became even more valuable, while those countryside conversions relying on car access might struggle to attract the eco-conscious professionals who are their target market. The ISA changes are where first-time buyers really get shafted, and this is going to have massive knock-on effects for the entire property market. From April 2027, £8,000 of your £20,000 ISA allowance must go into stocks and shares. You can't hold it as cash anymore. Think about what this means for someone trying to save for a house deposit. Previously, they could stick 20 grand a year into a cash ISA, building up that deposit tax-free. Now, they're forced to risk almost half of it in the stock market. The government claims this is about encouraging investment and growing the economy, but let's call it what it really is. They're deliberately making it harder to save for property deposits. They want your money flowing into businesses and stocks, not sitting in cash waiting to buy houses. A 25-year-old saving for 5 years could have had a £100,000 deposit ready to go. Now, 40,000 of that has to be in shares that could crash right when they need to buy. The over 65s get to keep the full cash flexibility, which tells you everything about who they think already owns enough property. This single change could reduce first-time buyer numbers by 15 to 20%, according to some analysts. But here's where the budget gets interesting for the rental market. The complete abolition of the 2-child benefit limit. 450,000 children are about to be lifted out of poverty, and that means more stable tenancies for landlords. Combined with the minimum wage jumping to £12.71 and young workers getting £10.85, suddenly your tenant pool has significantly more disposable income. The return of face-to-face benefit assessments also means less fraud and more reliable housing benefit payments. Smart landlords are already repositioning their portfolios toward family homes in areas with good schools, because these families are about to have much more financial stability. The welfare changes alone could reduce rent arrears by up to 30% in certain demographics. One letting agent in Manchester told me they're already seeing increased inquiries from larger families who previously couldn't afford 3-bedroom properties. The market's shifting beneath our feet, and most landlords haven't even noticed yet. The infrastructure spending announced is going to create property millionaires, but only if you know where to look. £13 billion is being pumped into city-region transport, with confirmed funding for the Lower Thames Crossing, Transpennine Upgrade, Northern Powerhouse Rail, and the Midlands Rail Hub. Properties within a mile of new stations on these routes typically see 20 to 30% value increases within 5 years of completion. We're talking about completely redrawn property maps. Areas that are currently affordable backwaters will become commuter hotspots. The smart money is already moving into these zones, buying up everything from student lets to family homes before the masses realise what's happening. One developer showed me their heat map of target acquisitions, and it's basically a blueprint of every confirmed transport upgrade in this budget. If you're not repositioning your portfolio toward these growth corridors, you're leaving serious money on the table. The Northern Powerhouse Rail alone is going to transform property values across Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, and Newcastle. So what's Reeves really playing at here? The OBR forecasts show borrowing and inflation falling, which creates room for interest rate cuts. But they've also slashed productivity forecasts, meaning £16 billion less tax revenue by 2030. This budget is a massive gamble that taxing wealth and property harder while investing in infrastructure will somehow generate enough growth to fill that gap. The Chancellor accidentally let the OBR figures leak early, which tells you how nervous they are about market reaction. Labour's betting everything on a simple theory. If they squeeze property investors hard enough, that money will flow into productive businesses and infrastructure instead. The pension changes, ISA reforms, and property taxes all point in the same direction. They want your money working in the economy, not sitting in bricks and mortar. Whether this works or crashes, the property market remains to be seen. But one thing's certain, The landscape for property investors just changed forever. The winners will be those who adapt quickly, repositioning toward transport corridors, energy-efficient properties, and stable family rental markets. The losers will be those still playing by the old rules, thinking they can weather this storm like all the others. This budget marks the end of property as the untouchable safe haven for UK wealth. The message from Labour is clear. If you want to build wealth through property, you're going to pay for the privilege. And with more changes definitely coming down the pipeline, every property owner and landlord needs to start planning their exit or evolution strategy now. The golden age of UK property investment isn't ending. It already ended the moment Rachel Reeves stood up in Parliament. What comes next will separate the professionals from the amateurs, and if you're not prepared, you're going to get absolutely crushed.